I was looking at the blog article that you created just to see if anything special is going on in there.
It's like pretty staticky HTML.
It
It
looks
was
like you just copied it over from somewhere.
Yeah, Igor's done some stuff with our blog. Um, so I just grabbed it and I'm gonna migrate it to like something much nicer. But
Okay.
really, it was just a place for me to blog. Anyway.
Right.
Um,
So
but yeah.
we need to make a decision on this whole overall architecture of
Mhm.
how much Angular is going to be, how much of Angular are we going to have in the web page? I'm really biased when it comes to MVC websites because I'm thinking like, if it was up to me, I'd make every single page on the website delivered through static Angular HTML, and then have the backend serve as an API. It's something that you don't really appreciate until you've actually built a big website like that.
Let me like quickly walk you through the old AirPair code base,
Hmm.
so that
Sure.
we just like meet minds with uh, where my head is at and where your head is at. And I
Hmm.
think there'll still be an awesome debate, but uh, just want to make sure you have the full context. So I get single page apps. Um,
Share your screen. Okay, there we go.
okay, this is the old AirPair app. I get single page apps, and I get all the awesome goodness of like client-side templating and loading everything through JavaScript. Um, but like my gut says there's a middle ground between like pure, like HTML shell that loads like all your scripts and segmenting your app into like sub apps. Um, and yeah, so one reason why I like segmenting, do you know in Sublime if you can like increase the size of, I'm going to share my editor so that it's like much bigger to follow. Is that the right one? Yeah. So one reason why I don't want to throw everything into one single app is for like developer workflow. I really like the idea of different developers being able to work in different parts of the application,
Hmm.
and potentially even do things their own way, um, over different like periods in the app. So with how I set stuff up with Backbone, in the old AirPair, let's take for example the page where you fill out a request. Um, there would be a HTML file, which is the holder for the request page. Um, there's some hacky stuff that I don't think we really need. Um, and what I would do, this is sort of like a very small example of it, is I would use the server to render data that was required for the single page app on the page. So avoid the need for like many HTTP requests to happen for a page to load, and you experience like that like 1 second of like delay and everything inflates and the page pops up. Um, and then like kind of bootstrap my whole SPA on the page. So really like the old AirPair is made up of a bunch of these exact same patterns. You've got the one where you're an expert and you review the request and say you're available or not available. So here like the data is a bit more significant. We're piping like the request, we're pushing the user's session. Um, and then there's all different ones. There's the settings page. This is the mangled one. So, okay, so stepping back, like I said, I really like this idea of a collection of mini or medium-sized single-page apps versus like one giant all-encompassing single-page app. Um, because I think it's good to allow developers to do what they want to do. And I like fast loading pages. I'm very obsessed with not having pages flicker on load, and we're quite sensitive to stuff like heat map analysis and like funnel tracking and everything. So I feel that like issues can occur with a pure like SPA model, not to mention of course like SEO and the like. So yeah, what do you think?
So, move my window back. Okay. So I agree with you that you want to make it so the developers can do what they want to do. But the thing is,
That and getting the user to like download every part of the application in the beginning. Like for example, we have a huge amount of stuff
no,
like
no, no.
that's
Like
administered manually.
Angular's the templates, the HTML code, and then the data is only downloaded when you access the resource. And the reason why I keep saying do this with Angular is because I've been working on the framework for almost 2 years, and I've been building that whole animation layer.
Sure, yeah.
And you can control so much new stuff, and you can handle, like, you can make the website really beautiful.
Okay. Well, then that
And
worked out
even
pretty
for a page flicker when the page starts, it can be controlled. I can pretty much guarantee that I'll be able to make it instant. When we know what the page is, I can work on optimizing it. But there's going to be a lot of struggle with, you're going to have the back-end generated stuff, the stuff that you have right now in the code, and then you're going to have the front-end stuff. And those two things don't go well together when you try to make one page that already has content and then Angular hops onto it, because Angular's not designed in that way at all. I've built a couple websites that way before. It kind of works, but you know, your
Angular
code,
sites.
yeah, like your code quality is ruined. It's just not designed that way. Like single page is that it owns all of the HTML. None of the HTML comes from the server. You can have a different subdomain if you want to have like the portal for the customer and the portal for the expert. Those can be different subdomains. Those can be different apps. And the www portion could be just a standard back-end traditional website. You're not shaking your head, are you?
I don't want separate domains. I don't think.
Yeah. But like,
so one thing that's like very much my like thought process with development is like the user experience always comes first. Like it comes before like best practices of like CSS or in this case we're talking about Angular. Like what the user experience is trumps like all design decisions.
so is there something I can do in the next day or two that would make you change your mind? What would make you change your mind?
No, I haven't made up my mind. This is like an open discussion.
What would make you go on my side more? Do I have to build you the existing AirPair website in Angular form that's instant and fast? Prototype.
No, I mean like let's like explore it. I'm very open to like understanding the Angular way. I just want to make it like upfront and clear that like if the user experience suffers, then like we would need to, I don't know, like use some other patterns. Like I said, like SEO is like really important for us. A lot of the site that we're building is like not SEO. So I'm very happy. I think we mentioned in the conversation earlier that like we only worry about a small part of the site that needs to be.
So why not make that part just a basic, easy, back-end driven website, like a traditional website, and then all of the hidden stuff where you have to log in, you have to do all that stuff, make that 100% Angular oriented.
So, you know, if it's like one way or another, then sure, we can try that. One thing that I like did successfully do in like the previous AirPair using Backbone and handlebars on the client was like have the exact same templates for handlebars used on the server. And that was just really cool. It was like super clean. You could just do the same thing really easily. So I get the feeling that with Angular, it's like either not possible or kind of dirty in some way.
It's kind of dirty, but that's not like, that's an Angular problem. Like, we could build a system that reuses them. We just have to have like a driver that sits on Node and does it. I think, let me check if there's a framework that probably does it. Pancakes.
So I think Ari Lerner has actually sort of like done this once or twice before. So we can definitely leverage him for this idea. And in this particular session, I'm not even like worried about it. I'm like just happy to like set up Angular on Gulp because like I've never set up and used Angular. So for this particular hour, I'm down to like just go really basic and not worry about these like server side client side issues if you're up for it.
Yeah. So what should we start doing then? Do you want to work on Gulp? Do you want to work on getting Angular into the app?
Yeah, let's work on getting Angular into that. So like where do I start? Like right from the beginning. Should I drive or do you want to drive?
I can drive for the first little bit.
Sure. All right. Sweet.
Okay.
And so do you want to merge that branch? It's pretty straightforward. There's nothing fancy in there at all. I tried because the app's so vanilla at the
So
moment.
we should talk about a few of the Git-oriented things. Like maybe talk for like 5 minutes, but then sometime next week talk with everybody involved in the project.
Sure.
Because working on Angular gave me a very good experience having like a repo that has a very good commit history. So for example, every commit has to have tests, every commit has to be revertible, every commit has to be formatted in a proper way. It's more important for a framework, so I get a website, it's not that big of a deal. But if there's a bug that exists from 2 months ago, I would revert the old commit, fix it, and put it back, like that kind of stuff. I don't, this is probably like over the top of people's heads, like for people who haven't done this way. But next week, let's talk about it for a few minutes.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
I'm up for that. Do you think we'll have some time to like get even to as far as testing today?
Yeah, of course.
All right, sweet.
I didn't think I was gonna do an AirPair session with the owner of AirPair. Okay. So let's make an example. Well, all right. Let's just put it into the existing app. Okay. So I use Vim to code. So. Okay. So here's our directory. So the first thing we want to do is we want to add Bower. Are you familiar with Bower?
It's like a client-side package management system.
Yeah. So in here, I'm going to say Bower install Angular. I'm going to put --s save, and that's going to create a copy of it. So it's going to put it into the Bower file. So whenever I do Bower install, it's going to install everything.
All right,
so,
step back for a sec. Is Bower like it's global, like on your computer, kind of like npm?
Yes, but npm is designed for Node modules, and Bower is designed for front-end packages.
What's the install command for setting up Bower?
So first thing you want to do is Bower, or you want to do
you just
npm
download it?
install Bower, like that. And you might have to do sudo.
All right, so yeah, I mean, is it like kind of synonymous? Like you got a Node modules folder, you're gonna have like an equivalent Bower folder, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
So we have our Bower file, and then you start off, you have to have a name. And I think you may have to have a version, but I'll see in a second. So you do Bower install Angular save.
All right, and there's a file that's like similar to package.json already.
Yeah, so it's called Bower.json.
Yeah, cool.
So that's installing Angular. I downloaded it, and you see how it created a directory called Bower Components Angular? But these are the files in here. Do you see all this stuff?
Yeah.
Bower Components is like Angular's inside of here, and then we have Angular.js in here. Right?
Cool.
Okay. So the next thing we want to do is let's use that file only, and let's install the test runner. So for testing, I'm going to go really good on testing for this application, because I don't want to have an application where I don't do testing because I'm going to get lazy. So in this package file, we're going to add another package called Karma. So we're going to do npm install Karma, and we're going to do save f. So that's going to install Karma, and it has a lot of dependencies, and it throws it into.
So is Karma like Mocha? Like?
No. Jasmine and Mocha are the matching libraries. Karma. Have you ever seen Karma before? No.
Nope.
Okay, so basically, when you hop into the Angular code base, So in here, we're using Grunt to drive all the commands for the website, but we have basically have a test runner called Karma that whenever I want to see if all the unit tests pass, I type in Karma or Grunt auto test. What that does is it launches Chrome in the background. Just give it a second, take some time. Let's see if this command is almost done. Okay, so that's done. Once again. So anyways, in this package file, you can see that I added Karma, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so the Karma's in there. So I'll let that run. I don't know what's taking so long, but maybe because the connection's slow and it has to connect to NPM. So we have Karma in there, and the first thing we want to do is make a test folder. So we make a test. This is where all the unit tests are going to go. It's almost like I'm probably going to end up changing the directory structure as the project grows, but for now it's okay.
So
anyways,
when you talk about unit tests, are you talking about like node code? Are you talking about front-end code?
front end.
All right, cool.
So it's launching Chrome. This is running
What
code right here.
what percentage of like front-end unit tests do you write? I suppose because you're building Angular, you like write a lot. Because I like in my past projects, I found like integration tests very handy, and then really like unit tests only handy like for like really complicated logic, which is usually like business logic on the server.
Yeah, so I'll write unit tests for everything. Like it's just one of those facets of being a good, like just becoming a better programmer, having better code. And the reason why it becomes a big issue is that when you experience a bug and you want to make a change from back in the history, the tests are really important because how else will you know your code works? Okay, so you see how it's running all these
People
tests?
generally write it and tell me.
Yeah, exactly. You see how it's running all of these tests? We have 3,000 tests, 3,216. So it's running it in Chrome in the background, and that tells me which ones failed. So I'm going to put the same thing on AirPair. So I installed Karma, so I'm going to type in Karma init.
It's running it in Chrome from
Yeah, so
the
Karma
command line.
basically...
So basically, we don't need Phantom.js because
No.
we have Chrome.
Yeah, we can use it if we want, but Chrome is faster.
Cool.
So Karma init, we're going to install Jasmine. We don't require JS.
I'm kind of into Mocha. What do you think?
It's Knockout JS.
Sorry?
You're kind of into Knockout?
No, Mocha.
Oh, Mocha.
Mocha. Sorry.
If you want to use Mocha, that's fine. I program in Jasmine. Like I'm.
What do you like more about Jasmine?
I'm just more used to the syntax. And Jasmine 2 got a lot of the features that Mocha had first. So you can do asynchronous testing very easily, and I don't know.
So do you use Jasmine like for Node on the back end?
Yes. Well, it depends because Express uses Mocha. So
that's why I kind of want to use Mocha because then you just got one framework. And if it's like syntax that you're worried about, then they have all like the different insertion languages.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's use Mocha now then, and we'll ask the rest of the guys in the team what they want to use.
All right.
So right now it's asking me which browser do I need. I want to say Chrome. We can test on Firefox, we test on Opera. It'll launch all of them automatically. And the source files we're going to test are inside of app, or they're inside of public. That's where all Angular code is going to be.
So hold on, step back. So Karma is like some sort of like intermediate process that like fires the browser from the command line. Have I got it right?
Yeah. So Karma starts up a website. It launches the browsers, and each of the browsers connect to the website, and then the website, the front end code on each browser communicates with this command, like the terminal command, and it tells it which tests pass and which tests fail.
Cool.
So before this kind of tool existed, you had to visit a HTML page and see if your test passed, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah. Or we was logged with Mocha Phantom.js. Oh, yeah. So like outputs and something.
Okay. All right. So we have this karma.conf.js, right? So let's make make your public. In the public directory, that's going to have all of our like JavaScript files, all that stuff, right?
So the way that the application is structured right now, and I'm definitely open to like reviewing this because it wasn't like totally clear. But Gulp is building like assets into the dist directory, dist, and app has like some HTML files, which at the moment, if you look at index.js, you can see that like both the app directory and the dist directory are like being served as static files for Node. Um, so, it, I, well, what exactly do you want to use public for? Is public the same as dist in your mind?
No. Dist is still going to be the final packaged website.
Okay.
But the thing is, dist doesn't make sense for a website that has a backend. Because how can you package the backend? You can't, right? Dist is usually meant for package, like all the code has been packaged into this nice directory that you can copy and paste and put somewhere, right?
Okay.
So,
But you still need to put that like all the node code, right? Would be part of dist.
well, yeah.
Sorry, I'm just processing.
This is why this is why it's good to have the split, because you can take all of the front end code, the JavaScript, the CSS, and you can throw it on like a CDN or something, right?
Okay.
And then all of the node code can run on just the server.
Okay, following.
Does that make sense?
It does, assuming absolutely no server-side templating.
No, you can. It's not like we have to use server-side templating or not. Like at that point, you can still serve templates from the node server, but all the static stuff that is 100% static always, like CSS and JavaScript and images, all of that stuff will be served from a CDN.
Okay, cool.
And that way, your assets on your website will never. You don't have to worry about the scaling. You don't have to worry about, finding more servers. The only part that you have to worry about is the node part, making that faster.
Understood.
And then if you have a static website, you can take it a step further and make it so that only the database is on like a dynamic server that has Node, like Heroku. And then the HTML, since it's run by Angular and since it's static, it sits on a CDN as well. So it's all about like structuring the website in a way that you can very easily package it, put it on another server, and so it's the server and the front end are different. But now, like, we haven't come to that decision yet. But the first thing we should do is we should make a public directory that has all of the scripts and the images and styles and stuff like that.
Got it.
So what we do is, so hop back here. So let's hop into this index.js file, right? This index file has like express definitions and stuff like that, right? Let's structure this code so that we place all of the node-related stuff inside of app.js, and then we place all of the static stuff inside of public. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use gulp to package it into dist. Does that make sense?
Let's go through it.
So app is for node JS code plus server side templates, right?
Right.
Public is for static JS, CSS, and images, and videos, and stuff like that, right?
So where would like less go?
Less would go into the public folder. Now, less is not static, right?
Right.
But then we do gulp, we do package, and it copies the files from public and compiles less and concatenates, and then writes all of the final code into this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, hold on a sec. So I think how Yuri and I set it up was like app is actually how you think of static.
App is how I think of backend.
Public, sorry.
Yep.
Right. I think we would have put all backend code into a lib folder.
But what about stuff like routes, and what about stuff like the models, like?
So that would all go into a lib folder.
But then you have to have one file, I guess that has index.js that ties everything together.
Yes.
Okay. But at the end of the day, it's still app is just called lib at the end of the day, and then I guess public is called app, right?
All right. Well, I mean, I'm open to exploring like different structures. I'm just trying to like climatize where I think what we were thinking and what I think you're proposing. And then public, I think what. So the thing I'm trying to get is why we need 3, right? I think it's just different namings. So I think in our thinking it would have been. All right, let's roll with this. Let's see how it goes.
The other reason why I'm doing the public method is because when I do something like less pile files, or if I do something like JavaScript merge files or something, it's going to look for anything that matches JS, right? But that's going to get the node files, but if it's instead of public, it's much safer to do this. That makes sense. It's just, you can just organize the files in whatever way you want in the public folder, and they can be organized in whatever they want in the app folder. And they won't compete with each other. The naming conventions won't get screwed up, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the only difference is we just had different namings for the same folders, for the same conceptual folders. I think it was like similar. Let me show you like the old architecture really quickly.
I think because you're used to building Rails websites.
I've never been a Rails guy ever.
No. Okay.
Let me just show you the old architecture really quickly. This was the template for, I think this was the template for Brunch.io, which is like kind of like Gulp, that came about earlier. It's probably not as good. So here the lib folder has all like the server-side code. The app folder has this like subfolder called assets, which is like pure static files that get copied into the public directory. And then everything else inside the app folder that's not assets, so like could be like less or SAS or templates, both server side and client side, like scripts. These all get like compiled with different like rules into different like files that then get also dropped into the public folder. So the public folder is this like copy of this original thing, plus like whatever configurations of like concatenation stuff.
Okay.
So.
Do you want to follow that method then? The only thing I don't understand is why is lib not inside of app?
Why is lib not inside of app? I think for the reason you pointed out online. I think you deleted the code already, but how like they don't like the node code doesn't get confused with the front end code. Kind of type something out.
But the thing is, for assets, you already have app assets. And this is styles and JS code and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, but it's like pure static stuff.
Right, but then what? Like, you might have one thing that's dependent from here to here. if you want to sort of split it off like that, it will almost be smart to have it in like a different, like put it into a Bower package or something, if you don't want the code to sort of get tangled at all. But if we do it this way, it might be better to have everything in applib, or
So the reason why not in applib is that the compilables can look for all JavaScript inside of app and package that as front-end code, whereas like JavaScript code in lib is like
oh, so this is node code then.
pure node code. Yeah, I think that's like pretty normal convention, right? Having like node code inside of lib folder and like npm packages and everything.
Yeah, it's good for the starting directory, which is fine. And the thing is, you might use them because your index.js file is in the root as well. But that's okay.
Anyway, let's actually explore your architecture and we'll see how it feels. But
Okay.
I thought it like because Yuri also has his like own idea, and I think it's gonna be really fun to just compare everyone's and come up with something.
Okay, so what I would do is I make a public directory, right? Like I have here. And then, I'd have my index.html file, and then all the pages that I have for the Angular side, like let's say that we have a page called like settings, right? So I'd make a settings directory. And then in settings, I'd make a index.html file. Settings page. So if you see how like the structure of the page, we have an index page for the root of the website, and then we have a directory which points to another file. So the entire public directory is organized in terms of what pages are defined by Angular. So if we, for example, we had a file called in the settings page, if we had something like settings controller, I'd have this. I'd have a settings controller instead of settings. And that way, just by convention, I know that settings controller belongs to settings. And then index.html uses that. If that makes sense.
Why do you call it settings controller? It's just not like controller.
Like settings.controller.js?
Like settings / just controller.js. Like if it's already in the subdirectory.
Yeah. It's really up to your own convention. But like with Angular, when you make a controller, you do something like that. The convention in the HTML code looks like this.
Right.
You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just the mapping of the name to the JS file is the same. But the cool thing about this is that, let's say that you have 50 JavaScript files, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Gulp, all you have to do is do public for all of the JS files. You don't care what order they are, and you just mash them into one file. Because Angular lets you make modules, right? So the settings controller, it looked like this. So we type in angular.module settings controller, settings module, controller or something like that. And then in here we we make the controller, right? We do all the code for the controller. But the point of this is that since every file is its own module, you can make hundreds of modules, and then all they have to do is combine all the files together. It makes the configuration files much smaller, and it makes sort of the organization of the entire web page much easier to deal with. Does that make sense?
I can sort of see where it's going, but I think to totally feel it, we're gonna have to cut some Angular code.
We're gonna have to make some Angular code.
I'm gonna have to feel the application in that structure.
Right.
I don't know a huge amount about Angular modules, so I think if we clarify around that, it might come together a bit better.
Here's some example of some CRM that I'm going to show you some AirPairing code that I did with Raphael. Basically, what we did was we built we built a Express app. So this is perfect for here. So here's the file structure that we did. So instead of app, I use server, but basically server is the backend code, and public is the front end code.
Okay.
So in this directory, I have a boot.js, which is the same thing as your index.js file.
Got it.
And all that it's doing here is it's getting Express, and you have the static stuff, which is all the Angular code. And then inside of you have that, and that's express.static. You're using that before, so you know what that means. And so that's at slash, right? So if you go to this website airpair.com/home, it would basically bring you to index.html, and then Angular takes over, right? So we're the route. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's loading index.html because it's the root of the website, but like the home file is basically like the URL for home is being loaded on top of that. So then what we did here is we have a server.app. So if we look into server app, this file we just basically booted Mongo because we have to connect to Mongo,
Right.
and then we booted Express, and then once everything's done, we ran a callback function. So basically, this app.js file basically starts up the website, and then we assign it so that any of the backend requests go through /API, and any of the any other requests, like an HTML file or an image file or CSS file, goes through the root. So if you want to see what the website actually looks like, I just do node boot.js. That's running the website. And if I go to localhost, I do 8888. So there's no basic website. We built this in an hour. But the point of this is that if you look at the network, so first of all, if you look at the URL, it has the hashtag set, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I go to new user, you see that's #new. But if you look at the server here, do you see how it went to /users? Try to download something from /users.
Yep.
So that's the data I tried to grab from the server. And the reason it's not working because I don't have Mongo Mongo running. So let me just turn that on. The computer's really slow for some reason. Okay, Mongo's running. I just reboot. Go. Okay, so I have one user in here, right? So yeah, so that's the data from the server. But the nice thing is that if we look at the public directory, in here we have our components, so the front end code, and then we have all the HTML templates we need. So if we go to index.html, here's what the index file looks like. There's this thing in Angular called ngView, which is like in Rails, it's like yield, and I can't remember the one for Express, but basically you can load in another file, like another template inside of there. And that ngView loads the template that's assigned to the route.
It's like a partial.
Kind of like a partial, but it's driven by the URL. So if you look at the Angular code for this, if we're on the root directory, the root URL, we're going to load in the home.html file into that partial for this page. And then if we're on the form.html file, or the form page for new, we're going to load the form.html file. So you can see that. Okay. So you can see that. You see how we have the ngView, which is all that content. We click on another page. You can see the content changes because the different collection of data, right? So that's how Angular handles views. But the point of this is that all of the backend code is delivered through /API. All the front-end code is handled through public. But when I want to package the website, I can just run it through gulp, and it could minify all the HTML. It could minify all of the JavaScript code and the CSS code and run through less and all that stuff. And at the end, you're left with this really small website that you can upload anywhere. Does this make sense so far?
Yeah, I think we got it. Minifying HTML just means removing white space, right?
Yeah. Nobody really does it, but it's just an example that you can process anything in the public. Like if it's static content, you can just like shrink the data size much smaller. And the cool thing is, then you use a system like Cloudflare. This thing costs $20 a month, and you can basically serve all of the static stuff from your entire website. You can serve it in thousands of servers around the world. And what it does is it scales everything so that the website will never go down. And like here are all the locations in the world that will serve the website. Not that it's really important outside of the US. It might be someday. Like what I mean is the bulk of your customers are going to be inside the US.
Don't know about that.
Okay. Well, in this case, I don't know much. I haven't really looked into much like where most AirPair sessions are done. But the point is that there's a lot of servers right here that would serve the front-end code as a CDN, including the index.html file. And then since the code that we have to actually download stuff is through /API, in this case, you could put it to a different server. Like this is like the production server. It might be something on Heroku or something. All that database-driven stuff is downloaded through a different domain. And all the front-end stuff is updated on your www domain.
Yeah, I understand.
So
basically, you think the speed of delivering static HTML files from different parts around the world is probably going to be faster than and making like lots of HTTP requests for data is probably going to be faster than just like plunking the data on the page from like a single set of servers that is doing everything.
Well, the thing is, we wouldn't have that many HTTP requests because we would compress all the CSS into one file. We can compress all the JavaScript into one file.
Sorry, I mean XHRs.
So XHR stuff, like yes, like for a traditional website, you get one big download, right? And one big download contains the HTML code for the web page. And yes, on a static website, you might end up having you could do it so that the server returns every page as one XHR. But the point is that complicates the backend. So you're familiar with like scaffolding a backend, right?
I mean, never really got into it. I was never Rails guy.
So the idea here is that you have, let's say that we have a customer.js model, right? Let's say that we have an account.js or something. So like all of these objects that contain data. You might even have like, what's an example of something you have on AirPair right now? Like in the database, like some
request.
Like yeah, so request.js. So you have all of these things, and on something like Mean, you would have to build, the create action. You'd have to build the update action, the destroy action, and what else am I missing? Pretty much those three, and then you'd have something like show, which shows the data, and then you have like index, which shows multiple ones, right? Like the whole REST pattern, right?
Yep.
The point with this thing is that you could spend however much time like crafting like an API that does this, but if you make the entire thing consistent and you use like a generator that generates the whole thing, you can have the API done very fast. And the API, it might be a little bit more nicely put together if you did it like manual. But the idea here is that you're having a machine build the entire backend for you, and then you just define what data goes in and what data comes out, and what the validations are. And then for Angular, you would just map the front-end code basically, we have a resource called, customer model, and this thing maps to customers. Right? And it automatically maps the get, the put, the delete, what else am I missing? Get, put, and the post HTTP methods. So you can scaffold the entire backend very quickly and have all the data in place and have a really fast prototype of the website. And then you use like an Angular ORM to sort of query all the data from the server. This way, you don't have to spend much time on the backend, and you'll have tests ready. You'll have the whole thing very predictable. You'll know exactly how it's built.
So, what's an Angular? You said ORM, ORM?
Yeah. So ORM because object
Relational mapping,
relational.
right? But what does that mean in Angular terms?
You'd have like var customer equals new customer model or something, and then you have customer name equals Matias, customer age equals 27, and then you do customer save.
I guess where's like the object relational mapping part? Like, what do you map?
Well, the thing is, it's not like a traditional ORM that would map itself against a database. The thing here is that you're mapping against the REST URL, so you'd be like customers. And then what happens is when you do save, it's going to automatically do post, API, customers, and then all the data. And then when you do save again, it's going to do a put method.
Cool. All right, I think this is like pretty similar to Backbone, or this aspect. In terms of like auto-generating an API, it doesn't appeal that much because I guess like this is an iteration on an existing app, and there's just lots of like use cases where we need to protect certain endpoints by different user authorization. Not every like API call is like RESTy. Like most of them are, but at least currently in my thinking, I didn't get the sense that like generating like that service layer is going to be optimal, and we should be able to like reuse a lot of the existing APIs.
So yeah, are we going to work off the existing database, or are we going to create a new schema?
We're going to work off the existing database, and we're gonna migrate it if we need to as we go.
That's Mongo, right?
Mongo, yeah. So, like most of it is RESTy, but definitely not all of it.
But if you think
we'll
about
get
it,
to explain it as we go.
if we can find a way to sort of handle 90% of the backend through like generated RESTy stuff, and then for the endpoints that we want to make very like specific, right? We would still be saving a lot of code because at the end of the day, would you rather deal with a website that has very little code and is mostly automated, or would you deal with a big code base?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the the first. Well, let's not worry too much about like I don't know high level discussion, and we'll see when we like start actually getting in there and cranking this with some of the existing stuff. But to recap, I think I get like how routing works. I think I get like models are going to be pretty similar to Backbone models.
So let me explain controllers to you.
Sure.
So this home page right here, right? It has a controller which points to the home route. And it's going to take a controller and it's going to take a template. So the way that Angular works,
Do templates have sub-templates? That must, right?
Like sub-templates?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's possible.
Is that normal or possible?
Angular has a new router that's being built, and the router allows for all that kind of like sub-templates, like multiple templates instead of one template, stuff like that. And there's a different router you can use that does it as well. This router I'm showing you is like the basic like prototyping router that doesn't have it, but it's going to go away in like a month. Basically,
The joy of AirPairing with the people that build the frameworks.
yeah, it's funny because I would have never thought this way. You know, not building a framework, I'd be like using like an old, 1.1 version and not caring about the new ones. But then, like after building a framework, it's just like it's night and day the new features that are coming out. And I think tomorrow actually we're releasing AngularJS 1.3 RC1, first release candidate. It has all these crazy new features and stuff like that. But okay, so we have this controller. So
Sorry, so let's use 1.3.
so
All right, so controller.
So a controller, whatever you set on the controller is data. So you're not setting any DOM related stuff, you're just setting like actual data. So in this case what we're doing is we're going to download the list of users from the API, right? And then we get back a JSON object of users. It's already been handled as JSON, so it's just like basically an array of users. And then you see how we did self equals this?
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically the this for the controller. We're setting data on self. So we're setting users equals users. So the controller has this array of users now. And then we have a method on
This is where I love my coffee script.
Yeah. But you'll see how this works in a minute.
Okay.
So in here as well, what we're doing is we're putting a method on here called remove user. So basically a controller have users, which is an array. Then we have remove user, which is a function. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Remove user, you give it a user, and it's going to find the user in the array of users in here. And then if it exists, it's going to delete it from the array. Like it's going to remove it from the array in JavaScript, and then it's going to tell the server to delete it from their database. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Right. So the thing that I'm just like getting or trying to understand is, I think in Backbone you might have like just called like remove on the collection, and the collection itself would have taken care of like the syncing rather than this like two-step approach.
So the two-step thing is because Angular's not like Backbone where every single piece is sort of given to you. With Angular, you can use whatever other plugins because for example, there's a resource plugin, and the resource plugin is like the model thing I showed you from before.
Right.
And with that, you can literally do users.remove, and then you give it an index, and then it would remove it from the collection, and it would remove from here. But
cool.
This is the way that you do it, just like
vanilla.
Like you don't with Angular, you don't need any plugins because the basic stuff is so basic that you don't need much code. But the point of this is that yes, we're sending data to a server to delete it, and next time they call it from the server, they'll have one less user. But the point is that we have this users array, which is like a local array that we're modifying. And the reason why that's important is because if we look into the template, here we're doing ng repeat user in home.users, right? So this home is like the controller. You know how I did ctrl.users before? We just aliased it as home. So if you look at home, you hear how I give it a name?
Yep.
As home.
Right.
So it's just like a variable that you just called as home. So the users exist on there, and what this HTML code is going to do is it's going to repeat over the users, and it's going to render the data into this template.
And this is like the whole scope thing, where like it just like magically keeps track of everything and re-renders.
Yeah. So notice here I have home.remove user. a method that I created before.
Yep.
So if you click on this button, it's going to remove the user, the user that belongs in this repeated list of users. Then it's going to come back to the controller, and it's going to delete the user. It's going to run this code again. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So is this like pretty standard natural pattern to like sort of have JavaScript methods inside of HTML templates?
Yeah. So the idea here is that I know it looks kind of weird because it looks like we're mixing JavaScript and HTML code. It looks like old school HTML, right? But the point of it is that you're not mixing JavaScript DOM code. You're not taking like create a div element and set the class name or stuff like that. All you're doing is you're handling the data. So whenever the data changes, the template reacts to it. It's like, oh, the data's changed. Okay, I'm gonna re-render myself or remove a DOM from the node automatically. So at the end of the day, you have very little DOM code in your website, barely any, because the HTML code is just it automatically updates the DOM as the data in the controllers change. So let's see an example. So if I go to new user, so right now there's one user in here. If I go to new user, and you don't have an H in your name, it's just JON, right?
Yep.
Okay. Put data for you, we submit it. The data was added to the server, but watch what happens when I remove the user. The computer is really slow. Yeah, reinstall this computer. Okay. So if I delete my entry, and let's make the text a little bit smaller. If you look into the inspector, notice how it sent a delete request to the server?
Yep.
I told it to delete the data. But at the same time, because we have the other line of code which removes it from the local array, as soon as it removed it, we didn't have to tell, like I'm sure with Backbone and Knockout.js, you have to tell the template to update itself. All you have to do here is remove the data, and Angular's smart enough to like notice that the data changed and then update itself. So this user set splice, it removes one entry at the given index, and then as soon as it does that, Angular's like, oh, something has changed, I'm going to redo the template.
Does that happen like instantaneously or only after the function? It would happen instantaneously, right? There's like a listener somewhere on that object.
It happens instantaneously because Angular's smart enough to detect, like, there's various tricks that Angular uses to do this. I know it sounds inefficient. It's not like they have like a counter that's running. What they do is when you click on something, when you change data on the screen, something's bound to change in the controller, like the data. So it checks to see what data changed, and if something has changed, it deletes it from the page. So this is called the digest cycle.
Got it.
Yeah. So that handles the data portion. And the API, like
So the controller is like really controller. Like it's like a Rails controller.
yeah, like with Rails controllers, you're doing the same thing. You're effectively just setting up data for the template.
Yeah, Backbone's really weird. Like a view is basically a controller.
All
Alright, cool. Should we build something? Should I try to build something?
You want to build something with Angular?
Like super small. Just like, the whole point is to get Angular into the application and for me to like have a tiny bit of a handle on it. So do you wanna commit some code to a branch? And I'll grab it and see if I can have something together. So a couple of questions while you're doing that. One, Angular like really like is built not to go with jQuery, right?
Like it works with jQuery very well, basically, what it has its own like lightweight version of jQuery built in, which has like the convenience methods of like attr and like what are the other classes you have with jQuery, like find and like the dollar and stuff like that. But if you use jQuery, then it uses jQuery instead. So the code that you have with Angular and the code that you have with Angular plus jQuery, it's the same code.
Right. I guess the thing that I'm kind of interested in is, like, for example, like $Ajax, right? You don't use that anymore. You use that $HTTP thing.
Yeah. So the reason why we use the $HTTP thing is because so you know how the template automatically updated itself?
Yep.
You know how I said that like it updates when a user clicks or enters data? So basically, there's key points in the application when it updates, when it knows to like recheck all of the data on the scope and then say, okay, what data has changed and what parts of the template should I update? If it did that every second, the website would be too slow. So it only does it when it has to. And $HTTP, it downloads something, and then once the download is complete, internally it says to the web page, to Angular, hey, I have new data, so update the scope and update the template if you have to.
Got it.
So all of these services that you use with Angular, like yes, they make it cross-browser compatible, but internally they're tracking when data comes into the application from the API and when data goes out, like when the user deletes stuff or when the user enters data into the screen. And the nice thing about that is that like the code is consistent. So if you look at another Angular app, they're obviously using $HTTP.
Right.
Anything that has a dollar in front of it is an Angular, like an Angular library. So you see up here how I'm doing $API, $HTTP, and then I have them up here in the function. This is known as dependency injection. So the idea here is that instead of you having to manually include libraries and include code, and then the code's like global across the application, in here you're basically saying I need to have these libraries, these functions, and I need to have them for this particular controller. And then Angular gets them for you. Like it runs the constructor function for the HTTP server. So it runs the constructor function for the API string. Any code that it has to do to have the object ready to be used. So you can make your own objects to be imported, or you can use there's like a certain amount of Angular objects that you can use. And, there's things like creating elements and like creating parts of the templates and stuff like that.
Cool.
Okay, so let's go back to the website.
Did you already merge that original stuff?
No, I didn't. Just click on the button, merge it, looks fine.
I'll merge it.
So this is like you were.
I'm just setting up the code for you so you can start typing some stuff, okay?
So, all right, just before you do that, so there's an index in app. There's an index in public, index.html.
Okay, that's right. Sorry, I forgot about that. So this is the one that we want to be adding the files to.
Probably, So would you eventually combine like a bunch of Angular like plugins in Angular into like a single script inside of like public scripts?
Yeah, and the way that you do that is this cool tool called Useman. And the way that this works is you make your basic HTML file, and then you run this gulp task. And what it does is it takes code that looks like this, like with these script files and stuff like that, and it combines them together based on what's in those comments.
Right. Does it kill the comment or leaves the comment in?
What's that?
Does it kill the comment or does it leave the comment in?
It removes a comment, yeah. But the nice thing about this is that you can make it so that it concatenates the file, it compresses the file, and then it adds like a special token to the end of the file so that when you upload it, then the browser knows that it's a new file to download. It's a nice system. So in here, we would add in something like this. We'd probably have in like build like combined.js. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I'm used to. It's probably easier to develop with the separate files, right?
Well, that's the idea here, is that you are developing with the separate files, and when it's in development mode, when it's local, you're going to have all this files separate. And then when you're ready to package it and put it on a server, you run this command and it combines everything. The benefit is that.
Is there like is there like a possibility that like there will be errors once you combine them, and like I guess your tests are going to pick that up, but like previously I've just been used to like I guess just developing against the combined file already. You know?
Yeah, so there might be errors that happen when it gets concatenated. You know, you might have like a semicolon that is out of place, or you might have a line break that causes problems. You'd still have to test your website out anyway when it is combined. You can definitely have it combine it each time, but it's slow because every time you save, it has to find all the files, put them all together. This way, you're not adding any overhead to your development. It's just a bunch of files that are floating around, and you only have to define the order of the files once. You only have to define them inside of this index.html file. So your gulp file doesn't have to know anything about what files there are.
Alright, let's go with it.
So let's take a look what happens in the scripts. So, unload function. So
yeah, you can kill this.
Okay, so I'm gonna call this. I'm gonna rename this to app.js, and it's gonna be the Angular app. And then up here, I'm gonna put in we're gonna tell it to load ng app, and we're gonna pass in AirPair. And here, I'm gonna make an Angular module and call it AirPair. And then in here, this is where we can start defining the controllers and all that code. So if I wanted to have like a hello world.
So that ng tag at the top of the HTML file is going to execute the code inside this module based on the value of right here, which is
Yeah. once the web page loads and all the JavaScript code is there ready, it's going to run this code. So in here, we're going to put in like root scope title equals hello AirPair. And in here,
What's root scope?
you know how I was adding data to the scope when I was putting like self.users and stuff like that?
Inside of the controller.
Yeah. So run is like a controller, like an initializer. Like it's like when the web page loads, this is the first function to run, and it basically sets the data on this thing called the root scope, which is like the top level memory. Whatever you set on this root scope can be accessible in the template. I put title.
Is it public? Like, can you access root scope from the console
Anywhere,
in the
yeah.
browser?
You can access it from any controller.
Okay, but you can't access it from like your browser console.
You can if you want to, but like that's for development purposes. You can
Right,
access
right.
any of the scopes. So we put hello title. Now, when I actually run the website, if I do node index.js, localhost 333. So maybe Angular didn't load. I think I forgot to put the public folder. Make things easy now, and I'm gonna move it all back into app. Oh, we have the dist folder. No, we don't. There's nothing in dist. I'm going to basically put everything inside of. Let's keep everything inside of public, and then we'll see what the other guys say if they want to keep it that way. All right. So if I go into the index.js, dist here, I'm going to put public. There we go. That isn't working. But what was the gulp file that you had, like the command to run the website? Just default gulp? Okay, so it looks like that was downloaded fine. Looks like the Bower thing is not downloading, so I put that into public, Bower components. Oh, that's why I gotta reinstall Bower. Now if I type in Bower I, just like npm I, which is short for npm install and Bower install, it's gonna install, the front end plugins that I specified.
In the packages, in the bow.json.
And here you see I put Angular. That's
How
what I
does
download
how does it know to put them in the public folder?
because there's this thing called Bower RC. And in here, I said, put it into public and put it into Bower components. So now, when I run the website, and I do gulp again, you can see that it works now.
Cool.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to commit this, and I'm going to change the Angular version. We're going to use
1.3.
1.3.0 at 18, I think, or 19. Let's check. Beta 19. Installs that version, and put a few other dependencies like Angular Animate, Angular Mocks. That installs those dependencies now.
Does HTTP come with like just Angular?
Yeah, it does. That's installing Angular with all those dependencies in there. Now, notice how inside of your Git git ignore file. You know how you're ignoring node modules? Did you set up this file yourself, or did it come with something?
You've got an outdated version. I got this from just GitHub. When you initialize a repository, you can choose like a standard. So I had dist in here before, which maybe you want to change to public. Because do we want public in this source?
We do, because that's going to contain all the JavaScript code that we're going to be making.
So,
we're going to have another dist folder later on, which is going to be the packaged, concatenated, fully ready front-end code for the website.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's ready like that. Now, one thing I'm not ignoring, which might sound stupid, is I'm not ignoring the Bower components. So this, all of the stuff it downloads for like Angular and all that stuff, I'm including.
Sorry?
The reason is I'm including all of this stuff, like all of those Angular, all the plugins that we download from Bower.
Yep.
I'm including those in the. I'm not ignoring them at all.
Right.
And the reason why I do that is because Bower is not really a good package manager. It breaks easily.
Yep.
And it's easier to have the files locally, because if someone makes a change and then Bower doesn't update because it sucked, then you don't know why the website's breaking. But in this case, if they make a change, you can see it in the GitHub history.
So, do we need all the files that Bower has in the source? Like, do we need like the minified version and some of the other shit?
We don't, but you have to have a script that would delete the files.
We don't need a script. You could just write a git ignore, right?
Yeah, but you'd have to specify what files are missing. So we'd have to look into here. We have to specify, ignore gzip, ignore map, ignore Bower, and all that stuff. Like we could definitely do that.
It's like one regular expression, right?
Yeah.
It's like Bower / dot asterisk access dot gzip or something.
I think there's a way to make most of them multiple, so you can basically do anything that matches gzip or matches
map. Do we want source maps?
Yeah, we don't want. I don't know enough about them because I've used them before, but not like in a big project.
We can probably get rid of the minified version as well, because we're going to minify it ourselves, right?
Yeah. But, yeah. So min.
I like quiet repositories.
Yeah. Anything that's min.css.
That's what it is.
What else are we thinking of? Anything that's gzip.
Yeah, let's get rid of the maps.
Anything that's md. Keep the maps because if you're developing locally, then if your concatenation code can detect the maps. They might be helpful.
So the files are still going to be on your local file system, right? Because you're still going to do Bower install or whatever. It's just that, well, see, this is kind of weird. It's just that they won't be in the repository committed to the remote. Right.
Yeah. So now, having all that stuff in there, we can do git status and
Do work? Something's not right.
Well, it's saying untracked things. So I do git add public status. You can see that it's okay. So yeah, that regular expression didn't work. So let me fix that then. Basically, do anything that's gzip, anything that's min.js, min.css, it's map, if it's the Okay. No, that didn't work.
Did you add it already?
I took it. Oh, that's because it has to be inside of public. Yeah, it still didn't work. Hey, that one did. You see how it's only adding in? We gotta ignore DS store files as well.
Yeah, let's do that for all the stuff
Right.
files.
Yeah, before it gets out of hand.
Yeah.
Okay. Remove all the DSOR files. So if I do git reset public status, git add public, git status. You can see that those are the only files that we're including now.
Looking good.
Okay, so now I'm going to add all this code, and you should be good to continue from here. Should I make a pull request, or should I just upload it directly?
We are on branch. Let's make sure we're on a branch.
Okay.
Yeah, make a PR. Well, actually, you don't even need to make a PR. You just have to.
Well, if I don't need to make a PR, why should I make a branch then?
Well, I'll still be able to download the branch, right?
Oh, you want to work out the branch? Okay. Push. I spelled initial wrong. You can work off that branch then. Share your screen.
Yeah. All right, so got your branch. All right, so we got like index page. Let's go with this one. Okay, I've got about components. It's good. This folder. Oh, sorry. A stupid mistake. I had multiple tabs. Alright. So we got scripts app.js has our AirPair module. For a big app, is there always like one main module?
That's how it works. There's always one main module, but you can include other modules into this module. You see at the very first line, you see how there's an empty array?
Yeah.
So in there, you can put another module names as a string.
All right. So let's think of something to do.
Make a
And this is where
make
you.
an imp.
Hey, I saw something interesting. Right. Hello, title. That's fine. Yeah. Let's think of something to do. All right. Here's what I want to do. I want to build a side menu where you can add tags into your settings. So we're gonna have 4 links. We're gonna have Rails. Angular. Node. Mongo. Node. Alright, so when you click on these guys, there's going to be like a menu down the left-hand side that is just going to show whatever you've selected. This is going to be one of the first features of the new site. That's on the site. And there'll be like a filter text box instead of like clicked, but that's how we're going to go. Alright, so when you have a huge Angular app, you don't actually put the templates on the page, right?
On the page? Do you mean in separate files?
Yeah, like where do you put your templates?
So you know how I created the public folder?
Mm-hmm.
You put
Hold on a sec. Sorry.
them in there as just
There's a
HTML
computer.
files.
No, I have two yes, 4 machines in the house.
You're all good?
Yeah, I'm good, yeah.
Alright, see you later. So it's 26. It's alright. We're
Was
back.
that Pratik?
That was Pratt, the man. Been helping lots of customers today. We did 26 hours today. Pretty huge. Alright, so yeah, topic of templates. So I think you like to load them by XHR requests, by the sound of it.
Well, that's
Right?
how Angular works. They have to be XHR files. Yeah.
Well, I think Yuri was saying that he likes to like throw them all into like a JavaScript file, and then you like only make one request, and you've got like all the templates handy. Maybe I was wrong.
You can do that. You can basically, if you later on in the day, you can merge a lot of the template files together. And what Angular will do is it'll notice that it's already been pre-cached,
Right.
but during development you want to make a separate HTML file.
Got it. Okay. You want me to create a folder?
Just make a file, like whatever the file is. Whatever, like, what's the name of the template going to be?
Side nav.
Okay, so make a sidenav.html inside a template, inside a public.
In the root level?
Yeah.
Alright. And it's going to look like, so it's going to be nav. And there's going to be some like ng each. I don't really know the syntax by heart. But
so what are you repeating?
So
the
for every technology that the user has clicked on, they clicked on it. We want that to be in the side nav.
Okay, so now do in the li, you want to do ng-repeat, so it's like an attribute. Yeah, and you want to put item in items, or item in selections. You're tagging, yeah, there you go. And inside of the li, you want to print out the name. So just put curly braces, like the, and put tag.
Tag that name?
No, yeah, tag.name, sure.
All right.
Okay, so now go back to your webpage. Wrap. So we want to load that Okay, so it's probably best if you have the tags, like the links, inside of the same template.
Mm,
What are you trying to achieve? Why do you have them separate?
well, it's going to be coming from like a settings object. So the actual place where you like build your settings versus like just display it on this menu are probably going to be like different things. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So basically, you want to display. So make an HTML element.
All right, let's just comment out this guy for the beginning, and let's assume like, well, let's just like statically set like two tags, AngularJS and Node, like I don't know, in the controller or something, and then we'll figure
Okay,
out the other part later.
so type in an HTML element and call it tags list. Like an actual, like imagine it's called tags list.
That
Yeah, tags. Yeah, like that. And put a dash between the list and the tags. Like a dash, like a hyphen.
like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Is that like Angular-y? Looks weird.
yeah. So now, someone's reading this HTML, they'll know exactly what that is, right?
Right.
So now, after the first tag, like as an attribute, put in tags equals, and then tags, like that. Yeah. So now go into that app.js file. Yeah, give you some code to paste into there. Give me a second.
So, do we want to create like a sub-module for this menu system?
We're gonna create something called the directive. And basically a directive is like an HTML element that doesn't exist in HTML, but you're gonna make it into this amazing sort of like, custom object thing.
So much about directives.
Huh?
I said I've heard so much about directives. Finally gonna name it today.
What was the HTML file? What did you call it again?
Side nav.
An HTML, right?
Yeah.
Almost done. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. So in the side chat menu that I pasted in here, in the Hangout window, copy the code. Okay, indent it properly.
On this coffee script, bro.
Okay, so let me explain what's going on. You create a directive called tags list, right? And that's
Okay.
the same thing as .run or .controller. And then inside of there, you're going to return an object, like a definition object, right? And the first thing you're doing is you're restricting it so it's an E, which means it's an element. Like, instead of having an attribute or instead of being a CSS class or something, it's an element, so it's an actual tag that you created. That side nav that we made is going to be the template that's going to load in inside of that element, HTML code. And then there's a controller which controls the data that's going to, you know how we have tag and tags?
Yeah.
And what it does is it takes in these two objects. One of them is $adders, which is the attributes, $scope. And the attributes is a list. If you go back to the HTML code, you see how we added tags equals tags?
Mm-hmm.
So you know how like before we were adding data to the scope, how we added users, for example, right? That's data you place in the scope. Tags is going to be a listing of tags that we're going to place in the scope.
Okay.
So we're gonna do that with those links below in a minute. Okay, so if you go back to the JS code, now inside of this controller, we're basically scope.eval is like evaluating the tags. So it's like you give it a string. It's like I want to have the tags from the memory, and it gets you those, and it's assigning it to its own scope. And a scope is basically the memory for that directive. It seems complicated, but you'll understand in a minute. This is a good example.
I think I get scope. What I don't get is the adder.
So whatever you place on the element, like
Yeah.
the tags list element as an attribute, is available on adders.
The thing that's kind of blowing my mind at the moment is like, this is HTML, but somehow
Yeah.
I think Angular is doing some magic that it's like pulling a JavaScript object off the memory somewhere, and it's like maybe sharing these tags between like this directive and another like part of the application.
Okay, so now around that whole tags thing, make a div element, and have the div element include all of the A tags as well. So all of those A tags, yeah, uncomment them. And could you make the A tags buttons instead? They don't have to be, but just for this example, just to be a little bit easier to understand. And delete the href.
Just reinstall. Oh, I just got a new computer. Hang on a minute.
Sorry?
I just got a new computer, and some of my like hotkeys are like not set up here.
Okay, so now for each of the buttons, do an ng click attribute. Actually, no. Okay, so the outer div, the big div that you put around it, put an attribute and called ng dash controller. And we're gonna call this thing. We're gonna call this.
Side note?
Sorry?
Side note?
No. This is like the whole. This is like the part of the application where the user chooses which technologies they like. So we're gonna call this. I don't know. User topics controller. So user topics CTRL. So capital U. Yeah. So controllers are always the capital. The first letter, capital. Okay, so now go into the JavaScript code. And now before the directive, make a dot controller. So after the run, so yeah, between line 6, yeah, and I'm going to call it controller, yep. And the string is going to be user topics controller. CTRL, yeah. And the U in the beginning is capital as well. Okay, and now what you want to do is, you see how I included root scope on line 3? You see how it's like a function parameter? What you want to do is you want to, in line 7's function, you want to put in just scope, $scope. No. Get rid of the bracket. Don't worry about the brackets for now. I can explain them what they are later, but just put scope, $scope in there. Yeah. Okay. So now on scope, put scope dot add equals function.
Like an anonymous function?
Sure. And the argument is going to be topic.
Topic, you mean tag, right?
Sure, tag, yeah. Okay, and now inside of the body, inside of the body, put scope dot tags dot push tag. And it's a function, so put the tag in the brackets for push. No, like it's a function call. Yeah. And now on between line 7 and 8, put scope dot tags equals an empty array. Okay. So now, update that. So now for each of the buttons, you want to put an ng like an attribute ng click, and in the string you want to put add. I'm going to put add and just now like add. Just we didn't call it add tag. Just put add, and now put brackets and put single quotes. And put like Ruby on Rails, for example. Yeah. And now do the same thing.
Is there a way to like pick up the context of like the button and just put the value inside?
Not in this way, because the template code doesn't read the DOM. It's like just the HTML code. But what we can do is we can put all of the topics into a list, and then we can have the list repeat on the page. So instead of having them in HTML.
Let's don't worry about
Okay, so you want to change the title of each one. Okay, I think this should work now. Let's try it out. Oh, we didn't call it, you know how we added the name? So just go back to the template. It's the template code, like the other one, the inner template. And then just take away the .name and just put tag. Because you know how we're just adding strings to the array?
Yeah.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yay, first AirPairing Angular feature.
Alright, so now tell me what's going on.
Alright, so you find this function add here, which is just pushing that value here onto the array.
Yeah.
The one piece that I was like still, like I said, not like 100% on top of, but now I think I see it, is that inside this div, right, somehow like the scope is like known between like the JavaScript code and the DOM element, so it's just iterating through this tags collection that's on the scope.
So what's happening is that attribute tags, you're giving it the name of the variable, right? So on the scope we have something called tags.
Right.
And if you go back to the JavaScript code,
this guy.
Yeah, well, if you go back to the JavaScript code, you see on line 19. So that name called tags it's present inside of attributes.tags. It's not actually the array of tags. It's just a string. It's just whatever value you gave for the attribute. Nothing else. And then the eval is actually getting you the array. So since the array is like an object, and once you get a hold of the object, you can add stuff to it. We're creating a pointer between the tags on this scope and the tags on the other scope.
Yeah.
So for example, on line see on scope.tags, put in scope.mytags or something. Like just change the name, mytags. And now go back to the inner template. Change tag in my tags. So
Right.
this piece of code has its own memory, its own scope, and then you're just telling it that, hey, take this piece of data that exists in this scope and then just attach it to this other part.
Right.
So try it out.
Well, that's gonna work.
Make sense?
Yeah. Can I access root scope from anywhere?
In where?
Anywhere?
Yeah, but the problem with root scope is it's like global variables, and that's always a bad thing because you could change something in one piece of the code and then have it change in another, and that's what causes a bug. So the way that Angular is structured is that each component, each controller, and each directive has its own scope, and whatever data you place in the scope is self-contained. So that way you can control how what data you're bringing in and what data that you're exposing out.
Yeah, makes sense. I kind of like want to somehow like be able to like pass it in declaratively versus like doing this magic. Is that the only way to do it?
That's the best way to do it because the data is it's read off the HTML. So if you go back to the index.html file, if I'm reading someone's code and I see this is good because I know exactly the tags list is going to be a list of tags, right?
Right.
And whatever tags I give it, it's going to show those tags, right? The beauty of this is that, okay, so you see how it says tags equals tags?
Yep.
Instead of having tags like that, put an actual array in this between the quotes. Like make an array and have single quotes for each value. Just do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like without quotes. Yeah, sure, like that. Now try this out. You see how I was smart enough to do that? So the nice thing about this is you just made a plugin, basically. You made this tags list element that you give it a series of tags and it's going to display it. And whenever you update the list of tags, then it's going to update that too. So if I want to reuse this code and put it on another part of the website, it's very easy. Just copy the tags list HTML elements and paste it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Well, I think
Okay,
we got my goal for this afternoon set up.
Yeah.
To get some Angular code rocking inside our application.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
On my
So we'll
limits,
continue more.
I might play around with it a little bit. I'll push this branch.
Okay. Let's continue next week.
All right, sweet man.
All right. Have a good night.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.